Jeff. Jeff, in Philly, you're on the Fanatic. Do you want the Eagles, or should the Eagles? I'll ask you as the great reporter that you are. Should the Eagles keep their foot on the gas pedal, trying to get to the 1 seed, or even if their 1 seed is out of reach, still playing it the way that they've been playing in hopes to at least sit Week 18? But that means Saquon Barkley still getting 25 touches. That means bringing some guys back from injury that could probably use an extra week. Should the Eagles keep their foot on the gas pedal?
Well, I'm not going to give you an opinion because it's not really kind of how I feel about the Eagles. But what I will tell you is that they will keep their foot on the pedal. I mean, the number 1 seed is too important, and quite frankly, I'm not really sure why it's much of a question. Then you have 5 games to go. I mean, so maybe you ask that the last week, and I don't know. Even then, the probability would be so much higher that you would get it, you would obviously keep the foot on the pedal. So, to me, I think it's not much of a question.
It seems as if the Lions are perceived to be the best in the NFC. You watch this, you admire it. What have you believed? How much of the Eagles either closed that gap or maybe exceeded? Again, I don't watch the Lions every day, so sure.
I'm not really sure. I do know that the Eagles, answered some questions this past weekend. I mean, they beat a good AFC team, one of the better offenses in the league. The Ravens' defense hasn't really been quite up to the standard that they've set there before. But to go on the road and beat Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and that explosive of an offense was impressive, and to match their physicality. So, look, they're definitely clearly in the conversation to win the number 1 seed. If you're saying that, obviously that puts them in the conversation to be a Super Bowl contender. They still have some time left here. There's still some areas of concern if you want to nitpick. I think the offensive slow starts have become an obvious problem and something that you get concerned about. Thankfully, the defense is playing so well that they never got further than 9 points behind versus the Ravens. But it was quite possibly that could have gotten out of hand, and all of a sudden you're playing a different game. Going into that game, I thought it was going to fall a little more on Jalen Hurts and having him to drop back and throw a little more. But the Eagles never really kind of let the Ravens get away from them, and they were able to kind of stick to their plan and eventually wear them down. And as we saw, Saquon Barkley broke through and scored a touchdown. So it's a good team, clearly. I think they'll say, there's areas that they need to work on too as well.
Jeff, can you walk us through what happened to Dallas Goedert and what it will be happening to Dallas Goedert? We saw you reporting yesterday that he could go on a short-term IR. I don't even remember when he went down, full disclosure, during the game. Okay, so can you just kind of walk us through what's going on with Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, it looked like he kind of landed on his knee, and they thought that it might have been a bruise or a minor sprain. And then he underwent further testing and MRI, and then it kind of came back a little worse than they had anticipated. So now it's, we are labeling it week to week, but it's quite possibly that he could go on short-term IR, depending how things kind of shake out here over the next few days, which would then kind of keep him out for four games at the very least. They're hoping maybe just kind of like a week or two, maybe 3, and then you get him back on the 4th. Goddard's going to be out a little while here.
Jeff, in 2022, Howie Roseman made the decision to not re-up players during the course of the season, and he didn't want a distraction. As I go back and read some of the stuff, he didn't want there to be any distraction. They've got some salary cap space. They got the ability to move. Do you think we will see anything done with a Zach Bond or a Milton Williams? Do you think that's on Howie's radar this time around?
I mean, I think it's certainly on the radar, but yeah, I mean, I would, that was smart of you to go back and look at, because, for years that was Eagles' MO. That was the way that Joe Banner had done it for years, try and get these guys in season, maybe when the leverage is a little bit more on the team side. And then Howie kind of followed suit with that, and you saw him do it. There were a few of those deals, I think, that he may have gotten a little burned on. I vaguely recall what happened with Brandon Brooks.
Right.
That was another one they kind of did in season, and I think they regretted that one a little bit. Not Brandon Brooks obviously was a very good player and earned his extension, but I think that was one that probably jumped the gun a little too early on. So I think that's why we're seeing, the last several years of the Eagles, guys that you may think that they would want to do that in season. You mentioned Zach Vaughn, Milton Williams. I think Mekhi Becton is another one that you throw into that category. I'm making the calls. I'm trying to find out if it's something that's very real and could potentially happen at this point. And I think that, what Howie has said in 2022 probably is going to hold up. We'll see. But they feel like they can get this stuff done in the offseason as well, and still have the leverage that they need.
Jeff, Jalen Hurts, he's taken on this role of being a game manager. I know he talked about it during his press conference following the game on Sunday. In your belief and in your reporting and in your opportunities to talk to him over the years, is this something that he's totally bought into, this new role where he's not dropping back 30 times a game?
Yeah, I mean, I used that in my headline and maybe in my story a couple weeks ago, and I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe guys are kind of following up on that a little bit, and it wasn't meant as a critique. I mean, I think in some ways the connotation of game manager doesn't appeal to some quarterbacks because it has, again, this kind of meaning that they're not. The offense doesn't revolve around them, and they're not downfield throwers, and they're not the guys that you can strap the game on their backs, the offense on their backs, and have them ride them to victory. And but let's step back here and look at it. I mean, clearly this, what they've done on offense is partly a direct result of how Jalen had been performing early in the season, and quite frankly, if you want to go back to last season, the end there. And look, it's not just about Jalen. You have Saquon Barkley. You have a very good offensive line. You have now a good defense. Playing this type of style on offense makes sense. But that being said, to answer your question, I don't think Jalen. I don't think he really cares too much about the labels. I think, I think what Nick says to some extent is true. I think Jalen just wants to win, right? And he'll do what's necessary to win. And right now they're winning. So, there's nothing for him to complain about. Not that he would publicly, but, if things weren't going well, then you'd probably have to see a little more in Jalen. And quite frankly, he's done it before. It's not like he can't carry the team on his back in terms of his arm. And he has had to make big throws, and he'll continue to have to make big throws. But, in terms of the offense being one that relies on him to, in the drop back game, I don't think that's it right now. And quite frankly, I don't know if that is the way the Eagles want to play it. When you have Saquon Barkley and you have this run blocking offensive line.
Jeff, listen, man, we appreciate the time as always. We hope you had a nice Thanksgiving and gearing up for the holiday season. We appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you again next week.